Ready for a deep dive into a real brain twister. Today, we're cracking open Robert Sapolsky's Determined
Ooh, yeah. Determined.
and asking that age-old question. Do we actually have free will, or are we just kidding ourselves? Lucky for us, we've got expert speaker here to guide us through the wild world of neuroscience.
Happy to be here.
We'll unpack Sapolsky's arguments and explore just what his claims mean for us, as humans walking around making decisions and stuff.
Right. Because this isn't just some abstract philosophy.
Definitely not.
This is brain chemistry, subconscious biases.
Oh, yeah. Sapolsky even throws in chaos theory for good measure.
He goes deep, but that's why we're here, to break it all down.
That's what we do on these deep dives. So listeners, buckle up. Sapolsky doesn't hold back, and he's about to challenge some pretty fundamental beliefs about what it means to be human.
Yeah, he really dismantles this idea of free will piece by piece. Like, he starts with this analogy, turtles all the way down. Heard that one before.
Okay, I'll be honest. That one threw me for a loop at first. It sounds like, I don't know, something out of a Dr. Seuss book.
Right. It's deceptively simple, but super profound.
Okay, so how do turtles relate to free will?
Okay, so picture this. A stack of turtles, right?
Okay.
Each one standing on the shell of the one below it.
I'm with you.
And it just keeps going down and down, but there's never a bottom turtle. It's turtles all the way down, infinitely.
Okay, yeah, like that old saying about the earth resting on a giant turtle.
Right.
And someone's like, well, what's that turtle standing on? Another turtle? But where does it end?
You got it. And that's exactly Sapolsky's point about our actions and choices.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Tell me more.
He's saying every single thing we do is a result of something that came before it. Like, you chose to listen to this podcast today because of a whole chain of events and influences that led up to this very moment.
So it's like, okay. Let me see if I get this. I had a salad for lunch because I'm trying to eat healthy. But I only decided to eat healthy because I saw that documentary about processed food. And I only watched that documentary because my friend recommended it.
Mm-hmm.
And it just keeps going back and back like that.
Exactly. It's an endless chain of prior causes. Sapolsky calls them antecedent causes.
Antecedent causes. Okay, I like that. Sounds very official and sciencey.
Right. And it makes you think. Because if every thought and every action is just a reaction to something that came before, where does free will even fit in? Like, where do we fit in?
It is kind of freaky when you really think about it. I mean, even if our choices are all part of this giant chain of causes, like you're saying, don't we still feel like we're making them freely?
Yes, exactly. Yeah. That's the thing about the illusion of free will. It feels so real.
It really does.
And get this, we're not the only ones who seem to experience it. Sapolsky even talks about studies that suggest that primates, like monkeys, might display a belief in free will too.
Wait, hold on. Are you saying monkeys are out there, like, contemplating their own existence and stuff?
Well, maybe not on that level. But there's research that suggests some primates show behaviors where they seem to understand that others have choices and make decisions, as if those choices are made freely.
Wow. So even our primate cousins might be buying into this whole free will thing.
Yeah.
It really makes you wonder, what is going on here? Is it just some evolutionary leftover, like our appendix or something?
That's one way to look at it. But if it's not us truly calling the shots, then who or what is?
Right. What's really going on in our brains when we're making decisions? Like, how does it all actually work?
Well, this is where it gets even more interesting. Sapolsky dives right into the neuroscience, and it turns out our brains aren't these perfectly rational machines. Yeah.
Oh, you mean we're not these Spock-like beings making decisions purely based on logic? Shocking.
Right. We like to think we are, but Sapolsky says our emotions often hijack the controls, especially when our biology gets involved. It's like this constant tug of war happening in our heads.
Okay, so you're saying my brain is basically a tiny coliseum with logic and emotion battling it out for dominance.
Pretty much. You've got your prefrontal cortex.
Mr. Logic over here.
Exactly. It's all about planning, thinking things through, self-control, that kind of stuff.
Right, like the voice in my head saying, put down the cookie, you're not actually hungry.
Exactly. But then you've got the limbic system. This part is all about instant gratification, emotions, impulses, those I want it now urges.
Ah, so that's the voice saying, just one cookie, what could it hurt?
Exactly. And sometimes those hormones, they jump in the ring too. Testosterone, cortisol, that stress hormone, all that can really give the limbic system an edge in the fight.
Okay, so that explains a lot about my stress eating habits.
Yeah.
It's not just me lacking willpower. It's a full-on hormonal battle going on in there.
It's way more complicated than we realize. And think about implicit bias, for example.
Okay, I've heard that term. I get the gist. But to be honest, I'm still a little fuzzy on the specifics. Can you give me a refresher?
Sure. So implicit biases, they're these unconscious attitudes or stereotypes that we have about other people.
Oh, like those snap judgments you make about someone before you even realize you're doing it.
Exactly. We may not even be consciously aware of them, which is what makes them tricky. And they can really influence how we see and interact with others.
Subtle but powerful.
Exactly. And Sapolsky explains that when we see someone who we perceive as different from us, often our amygdala, that's the fear and emotion center, it fires up before our prefrontal cortex can even process what's going on.
Wow, so we're reacting emotionally before we even have time to think. That's kind of unsettling.
It is, but here's the thing. Just because we have these unconscious biases doesn't mean we're stuck with them.
So there's hope for humanity yet. Tell me, how do we break free from these automatic reactions?
Right.
Asking for a friend. Okay, asking for myself.
Well, that's the million-dollar question, right? A lot of researchers are trying to figure that out. But Sapolsky's big point is that understanding the neuroscience behind those biases is a huge first step.
Okay, so knowledge is power.
Exactly. When we understand that these reactions are not even our true beliefs, just products of how our brains work, it helps us challenge them.
So it's not about beating ourselves up for having these biases,
Yeah.
but becoming aware of them so we can do better.
Exactly. Now, ready for another layer of complexity?
Hit me.
Let's talk genes and environment. Sapolsky argues that our genes are like a blueprint for our brains, right? But it's our experiences, especially when we're kids, that actually shape how those genes express themselves. That's epigenetics.
Wait, hold on. You're saying even my childhood environment is affecting how my genes work right now. My mind is officially blown.
It's wild, right? It's like nature and nurture are in this constant dance, and it's shaping us at our core.
Okay, so it's not nature versus nurture. It's more like they're partners in crime.
Exactly. And Sapolsky, he points out this has huge implications for how we view things like success and opportunity. Like, studies show children who've had a tougher go of it often show differences in their brain development, especially in that prefrontal cortex area as early as kindergarten.
Wow. So even before some kids have even had the chance to really experience the world, things are already different. That's a powerful argument for like universal preschool and all those early intervention programs.
Absolutely. It really highlights how important early experiences are and how the playing field, it's not exactly level for everyone.
Not at all. It makes you think about how much control we really have.
Right. So we've got our genes, environment. Where does that leave free will? It's feeling less and less like we're making conscious decisions and more like we're a product of our biology and everything we've experienced.
A lot to unpack there. But before we get too deep in the weeds, Sapolsky, of course, throws us another curveball. This time it's chaos theory. Are you ready for this?
Bring on the chaos.
Okay, so I've heard of chaos theory, but honestly, it's always seemed, well, a little chaotic.
It's a lot. It basically says that even the tiniest events can snowball into huge, unpredictable outcomes.
Like that butterfly effect thing. A butterfly flaps its wings in, I don't know, Brazil and causes a hurricane in Florida.
Exactly. And Sapolsky says this kind of unpredictability, it's everywhere, even in our own lives.
Wait, really? So you're saying even if we knew everything about a person, their genes, their past, their whole life story, we still couldn't predict their choices with complete certainty?
That's chaos theory for you. There's always an element of randomness that throws a wrench in the works.
Okay, so where does that leave us with free will? Does chaos theory give us a way out of this deterministic dilemma? Is it the wild card?
Now that is the question, isn't it?
So does chaos theory mean we do have free will? Or is it back to the drawing board?
Well, that's the thing. Some people say this randomness, this unpredictability, that's free will right there.
Like, it's not all predetermined because there are too many factors at play.
Right, exactly. But Sapolsky, he doesn't quite agree. He says chaos theory, it doesn't prove free will. It just means the system is more complex. We're not controlling the chaos. It's just that the chaos makes it basically impossible to predict what's going to happen.
Okay, so more questions than answers. But Sapolsky, he's not just trying to blow our minds with the idea that free will doesn't exist, right?
Yeah.
There's got to be more to it.
Exactly. He wants us to really think about what this means for how we live, how society works, all of it.
Okay, so what does it mean? Like, if we're just products of our biology, our environment, all these forces outside of us, what's the point of trying to be good, make ethical choices, all that?
Right. It's the big question. But see, Sapolsky argues that just because our choices might be shaped by things we don't control, it doesn't mean they're meaningless.
So it's like saying, well, I didn't pick my genes, so why bother eating healthy?
Exactly. It's just not how it works. We're still responsible, even if we didn't 100% choose everything about ourselves.
Okay, but how do you square that, especially with justice? Like, how do you punish someone if maybe they weren't in total control?
That's where Sapolsky gets radical. He proposes a shift from punishment to something more like a quarantine model.
Quarantine.
Yeah.
Like for dangerous people.
Yeah. If criminal behavior, if we see it through this lens of like, well, they're a product of their history, then it's more about identifying who might be dangerous, not to punish them, but to protect everyone else.
Okay, but how do you figure out who's potentially dangerous without, falling into those same biases we talked about before?
Right, it's tricky. Sapolsky admits there are no easy answers. It's more about a total shift in thinking. Less about punishment, more about understanding and, like, risk management almost.
So less about did they choose this and more about what do we do now?
Exactly. And he makes this comparison between how we see justice now and, like, how people used to think about epilepsy.
Oh, right. They used to think it was demons or something.
Yeah. Cures were exorcisms, even executions. Crazy when you think about it now, right? But it shows how when we don't get the brain, it can be bad news. Makes you wonder how future generations are going to judge our justice system.
Whoa, yeah. Hopefully we're moving in the right direction. If we can change our minds about something like epilepsy, there's got to be hope for the justice system, too.
Right. It takes time. But that's kind of the good news in all this, right? We can change. Sapolsky, he sees the potential for us to grow. It's just we got to be willing to challenge what we think we know.
So it's about being open to new ideas, even if they're uncomfortable.
Exactly. And this isn't just about the big stuff like the law, but our personal lives too, how we treat each other.
So, like, if my partner does something annoying, I shouldn't just be like, well, their genes made him do it.
Probably not the best strategy. It's more like understanding that those annoying actions, they come from somewhere. Remember that study Sapolsky talked about, the judges and parole?
Oh, yeah, the ones who were more likely to give parole after lunch.
Exactly. Their blood sugar was up, they were feeling good, bam, more lenient. But later, hungry judges, not so much. Shows how even stuff we think is totally rational, it's not always.
Wow. So maybe we should all be cutting each other a little more slack.
Right. A little more understanding. We're all just working with what we got.
It's like that saying, be kind, everyone's fighting a hard battle.
Exactly. Now, that's not to say you just excuse bad behavior, but maybe let go of the need to be right all the time.
So accepting that maybe we don't have free will, that could actually be a good thing.
Right. Sapolsky's point is it takes the pressure off. We can embrace our imperfections, forgive ourselves, forgive others, all that.
Find a little more peace in the chaos. I like it.
Right. And remember that story about the baboons, Cato and Finn, chasing the gazelle?
Yeah, that was a wild one.
It shows how even those split-second decisions, they're not happening in a vacuum. It's biology, past experiences, everything's connected.
It's kind of mind-blowing when you think about it like that. We're just one small part of this whole intricate web.
Exactly. So, yeah, our choices, they matter, but they're shaped by so much that we don't even realize. It's humbling.
Totally. So as we wrap up here, what's one big thing you hope listeners take away from Determined?
I think it's the importance of questioning everything. Don't just take Sapolsky's word for it. Think for yourself, challenge what you think you know, and keep exploring these big questions.
Love that. So even though our deep dive's ending, the conversation's just beginning.
Right. And who knows, maybe that's how we build a better future. By embracing the uncertainty, acknowledging what we don't know, maybe then we find a little more compassion along the way.
Beautifully said. And on that note, listeners, thanks for joining us on this wild ride through Determined. We hope you learned something new and feel inspired to keep questioning, keep exploring. Until next time.